welcome to another edition of the Total Film Critic podcast. We are going to be discussing two films, Auntie Mame from 1958 and The Hebrew Hammer from 2003. But first, we are going to do something special. We're going to do another edition of the Total Film Critic podcast players.
Oh, wow. Well, we're going to kick off the scene from the King of Comedy, the Martin Scorsese, Jerry Lewis, the other guy. Oh, yeah, Robert De Niro, a minor actor, comedy film, dark comedy classic from 1982. And we're going to do the scene when Rupert Pupkin, played by moi, enters the reception lobby of the studios where Jerry Langford tapes the Jerry Langford show. And Thad will play the receptionist, and the wonderful classic cat's going to play Kathy Long, who's Jerry, I believe Burt Thomas's assistant and Jerry Langford's assistant. So I'm Rupert Pupkin, and I'm approaching the very lovely and attractive receptionist played by Thad here. Okay, and hopefully I'll be able to read these with my glasses.
And I'm going to do my best Mae West impression.
I don't think you can top it last time when you played Buddy Love. Your Mae West interpretation of Buddy Love was stellar, man. Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pupkin, but Mr. Langford's secretary has no record of any appointment.
Pardon me?
Mr. Langford's secretary has no record of any appointment.
Well, technically speaking, I don't actually have an appointment. Jerry asked me to call him today, and when I couldn't get through, I just thought,
I see. He says Mr. Langford asked him to call. Mr. Langford's secretary wants to know what this is in reference to. Would you mind talking to her yourself?
Sure. Is this convincing as a telephone? Hello? Yeah, Jerry and I discussed my being on the show last night, and he told me to call. Oh, no, I don't mind at all. I'm supposed to wait, Mr. Receptionist. I'll just wait. And here comes Kathy Long.
Mr. Pipkin?
Yes.
Pupkin?
Hi, yes.
I'm Kathy Long.
I'm Mr. Pupkin.
Can I help you?
I'm sorry, but you are?
I'm Bert Thomas's assistant.
Bert Thomas?
Yes, he's our executive producer.
Oh, yes, I'm sure he is. Well, see, I've already talked directly to Jerry about my being on the show, and he told me, to get in touch with him. So I'm just here to follow up on that.
What do you do, Mr. Pupkin?
Stand-up comedy.
Fine. Where are you working?
Well, right now I'm developing new material,
I see. Well, as soon as you start performing again, let us know where you are, and I'll send my assistant down to check you out.
Well, sure, but that's not necessary, Miss Long. See, Jerry and I already went over all.
Does Jerry know your work?
I don't think he does.
You don't happen to have a tape or a demo that we might listen to?
Oh, sure. I've got lots of tape. So yeah, that's no problem.
Good. Well, why don't you just send one to us? And I assure you we'll listen to it promptly.
You know what? Great. I'll do that. I'll do that. I can see that would be a lot easier for Jerry. Thanks a lot, Miss Long.
Don't mention it, Mr. Pupkin. Now, if you'd excuse me.
Sure. Thanks again. Okay. And scene. The Total Film Critic podcast players.
Wonderful.
We probably could have found a more dazzling part of the movie to do, but I wanted to do something where I knew the three of us could do it.
I feel like they cut out, like they added more definitely to the scene because that's not exactly how it goes. And I did throw you for a loop, and I did do the Pipkin.
Yeah.
Because they did do that. They did mess up his
Right.
name all the time.
Yeah.
So that wasn't in the script, but
The next scene we could do is a Jerry being tied up with Robert De Niro holding the cards, and
Now
Cat-
you're talking.
Cat could be
That's
the
the theme.
Sandra Bernhard character. The other card.
And when Rupert and Sandra get into it, that little bicker.
I just want him to wear his
You
sweater.
dropped the card's upside down. No, the other card. The card's upside down.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, well, on with discussing the two films.
Yes, we're starting with Auntie Mame from 1958, directed by Morton DaCosta. Hopefully I said that correctly. But this was a huge film when it came out in 1958. It was actually a Broadway version, and this was Morton DaCosta had also done the Broadway play for over 600 performances and was hired to direct. This was his directorial debut for the film. He also did The Music Man a couple years later, but didn't do many films. But this was very popular, written by a best-selling book about a orphan boy who his father passes away, who comes to live with his very eccentric, flamboyant aunt, and she has broad views and ideals about the world, and the people that take care of the boy in the custody, of his funds, do not particularly enjoy the aunt.
Mr. Babcock.
Yes.
He's played by Fred Clark, who was also in several Jerry Lewis films. He's always the dude.
That's right. He was in The Caddy.
Yeah,
I believe.
And Visit to a Small Planet. He's always the bald dude, which Jerry, like, he throws, pretends to throw something at, and in both movies, and like it attaches suction cups to his bald head, and like Jerry is trying to pull it off in The Caddy anyway, and then it's a similar joke in Visit to a Small Planet. So yeah, that guy.
Was he also in Living It Up?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
He's in a lot of.
What did he put in Living It Up?
He was the head of the newspaper.
Oh,
yeah.
Mr. Stone.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So he is one of the main supporting cast in the film.
Yeah, he's in a ton of movies. He was a very great character actor throughout the years. He's in a ton of things. But yeah.
Well, and unfortunately, Kat and Thad are going to do the heavy lifting discussing this film. I planned to watch it last night, and I attempted to watch it, and the streaming site that I was going to watch it on just kept buffering.
And I'm kicking myself because I should have sent a backup copy of it.
It had two other options for servers, and those were inactive. So the 10 minutes or so of the film that I did see was, the actress who played Auntie Mame, she played the hell out of that character, and I hated that, I couldn't see more of it, but I got a sense of where the film was headed, and the restoration of the film was just phenomenal. It was just crystal clear. I mean, you could even her jewelry was just bling, So maybe I'll catch it down the road. But Thad, you suggested this film, so I'd like you to tell the folks why this film was essential for you to recommend.
So when I was younger, I think I've spoken about this before, but I loved classic movies. My grandpa would have a lot of movies. I didn't see this one from my grandpa, but I would go to I always was in the library, and our local library you would always go there to rent your movies because they would be free. You would have back in the day, you go to the library, get your library card. And this was before DVD, so everything was VHS tapes. So I remember the limit was like 5 movies you could rent.
Please be kind and rewind.
Yep. So this was the one that I believe my mother and I chose, and we watched it, and I remember it, was extremely funny. And so I remember watching it, and a few years back, I was like, oh, I remember that film. So I revisited it, and I was like, this is hilariously funny. But I grew up, with that, watching the old VHS tape. But talking about the restored color, I mean, I've never seen it more crystal clear on the restoration. I think they even did a blue.
What were some of the unorthodox parenting skills that was just throwing everybody for a loop?
Oh, and Auntie Mame?
Yeah.
Well, one of her friends in the film at the party is a teacher of the nudist colony, and she enrolls.
They approached that subject in 1958. Oh my God!
it's very it's really subtle in ways. Like there's a few things that they had to get through the censors, like but it's very subtle. But the I would say some of the discussions that they have are maybe a little racy for the time, but not too racy for the censors, I guess. Wouldn't you
Well,
say
they're
so, Kat?
concerned probably about the fact that, I mean, this was a little kid that she was taking care of.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and the school, that it's just a nudist place. Like the teachers were nude and the kids were all nude, like boys and girls together. Like what?
There's
And
also, I don't think you quite got to the part in the film, Audi, but there's a part where the people are saying big words at the party, and she says, anytime you don't understand a word, you write it down. So then later she sits down, she's like, what have you learned? And he's like, oh, heterosexual and all these, and she's like, oh, and she rips it up, and she's like, my, you have an imaginative mind. And she's like, we don't need to discuss these words until much later.
okay, so there is a limit to where she will go, that character.
Yeah, she's protecting him, but she's like, just write down whatever word you don't understand, and then she's like, oh, you're not ready for that yet. So she's very overprotective of him, but she wants him to experience all different sides of life, and she feels that the bank manager and other people are trying to condense him into this little bubble, little box that they want to conform to something, and she wants him to make his own decisions and teach him. So you were kind of right about where the story goes.
Well, I wasn't expecting that, but yeah, okay.
It's very it's not over the top. It's tastefully done, I would say.
All right. Okay. So then what's like the big breaking point of the story? The climax or the awakening, that supposedly every film has an antagonist and protagonist. So what's the crux of the story when the characters shift or whatever?
Kat, you wanna discuss that?
so what was the question again? It was
What's the climax of the story? Like the antagonist, protagonist, kind of the main.
well, basically, Patrick's character, who she's been raising all this time to not be a snob, becomes a snob. And so he's about to marry this rich girl, and he's trying to fit into her family. Basically, Mr. Babcock has been influencing him all these years. And so he went to the best schools after that whole incident, because he found out that he was going to a nudist school. So he dragged him out of that. It's like, I'm going to make you into a God-fearing Christian if I have to break you. And so he turned him into a snobbish person. And like his future in-laws are anti-Semites. So that's tackled in the story, where they want to keep it restricted, and Auntie Mame comes to their house, and they're telling her about, oh, it's only our property is restricted only up into this line, and some people are wanting to buy it, and the wrong kind of people, basically.
Wow.
So and they said this guy named Epstein, and Mame was like, oh, the cellist, there's gonna be such beautiful music there, and then they're like, you don't understand, we want to keep these people out, basically. And even Gloria, who he's gonna marry, is like that too. And when she tells them, hey, my house is in a restricted area, and then I never had caught this joke before, but Mame was like, I'll get a blood test. So because to prove that she's not Jewish, she just like made that joke.
And also she after that, she throws a big party to kind of get back at everybody, and to be like, hey, I'm gonna protect my nephew, and I'm gonna show you my lifestyle, and gets this eccentric furniture and lavish drinks, and just you'd have to see it, Audi.
Yeah, drinks with fire, alcoholic drinks with fire, and she's like serving them pickled rattlesnake and all these fun things. And her secretary is pregnant without being married, or they're not sure she got married, and it's
What is
tackling
Auntie
all these
Mame's
subjects.
career anyway? How is she able to live this expensive social lifestyle anyway?
Well, she did lose her earning, her, I guess I would say to begin with, she was an heiress probably because her brother was also rich, but then she lost it all in the stock market crash in 1929. So she had to go out and work and through several misadventures and different jobs. And that's how she meets her future husband, who's Southern and she's a Yankee. And so she goes out to meet his family. And
yeah, they have that whole thing in the film where they have a huge fox hunt. And so Auntie Mame has to go to a fox hunt. She has no idea how to ride a horse, nothing. Patrick is helping her crash course how to learn how to ride a horse so because she wants to impress this man because he's interested in her. And so, they eventually marry, and then she gets, a lot of the fortune back that she had lost in the stock market crash.
Okay.
Yeah, and she can't even put on her boots properly. That was really fun. She has them dangling off her feet and is trying to walk on them. And like Beauregard, who becomes her husband, like he comes in the room and he sees her feet and she like crosses them and it's like flapping boots. But yeah, she becomes a widow eventually, and she gets all of his fortune, like I'm assuming. So yeah.
So how are the characters at the beginning of the film and the very end of the film? What's changed?
I would say that Mame did stay true to herself.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of her main quote in the movie too is kind of like, life is a banquet and most poor suckers are starving to death. So her philosophy is like, you have to make the best of life, and she feels that a lot of people around her just don't have that. They're not living life to the fullest. So every person that comes in contact with Auntie Mame is pretty much, sometimes they're repulsed by her ways, but then other people are drawn to it, and it changes them. So there's definitely a growth to the characters that are introduced.
So the nephew, he gets something out of the experience. I mean, is he the same age at the end of the movie, or is this like going for years?
No, he grows up into a full aged man.
Okay.
And married.
Yeah, he already probably graduated from college, I think, or he was still in college. Mame does like she is the same throughout the whole movie, but she also has a moment of humbling when she loses her fortune. So everybody is influenced by her, and she doesn't change in many ways. She's just influencing others by being herself, but she does have those moments where, like, emotional moments where she is affected and gains life experience through, going to work. And she's not good at those jobs, but she's trying to learn. And yeah, Patrick, I mean, he changed a lot. He was a nice, sweet little kid, eager to like listen to anything with Auntie Mame, and then he's kind of ashamed by her at some point because he was like, "Can you not act this way while I'm introducing you to my in-laws?" Basically.
Okay.
But then he shapes up and he's back to his old self.
So then let's talk about the filmmaking part of it, Mr. Director. What are your observations in the direction?
The film, when I learned that this was the directorial debut of Morton DaCosta, I mean, he does a really good job of it. He does have a style of making the film episodic, kind of, in where, he'll fade out at certain points of the movie. He'll do like this dark fade out, which is very interesting technique. You don't really see that. It kind of feels very like you're in a theater where the lights go out and then you go into the next scene. So he does do that transition process. But it's he did a really good job at directing it. Actually, some of the Rosalind Russell was in the Broadway play, and he brought over the young Patrick Dennis and the Auntie Mame's houseman. I can't remember his name.
Oh, that's her servant, Ito.
I believe he's Chinese or Japanese.
Oh yeah, the Asian houseboy. Oh, that made me cringe. But
yeah.
What are you gonna
So
do?
he was in the play. So they brought over a few people from the Broadway play, and the movie was extremely successful because I think at the time Warner Brothers didn't have they weren't having a lot of hits, and so this was a big hit for them. It was nominated for like 6 Oscar awards, but it didn't win anything. And Rosalind Russell was nominated for Best Actress, didn't win, and it was hugely successful. And it almost garnered a sequel, but Rosalind Russell was like, well, I never like to play anything more than once. I like to do different things. So she declined to be in a sequel because there was a sequel book to it. So it was just a one.
I had heard it was the musical version that she was asked to play. So Lucille Ball ended up playing that, but
I didn't hear that, but apparently the second book was called Around the World with Auntie Mame, and Jack Warner approached her to do a sequel.
And Auntie Mame are the same character. The musical. Ah,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Well,
that's what I was thinking of when you first pitched this movie. I was thinking be author Lucille Ball thing or whatever.
Yeah, and actually, it was a revamped musical, and I think Angela Lansbury. There's a huge thing because Angela Lansbury, I think, had played that on Broadway, and then she didn't get asked to be in the movie. Lucille Ball did, and everybody thought Lucille Ball was extremely miscast and that she was too old for the film. And I think there was some criticism on Lucille Ball's singing abilities too.
She's not a good singer on that.
Because that's a huge character to move the film along.
And I didn't like the musical version from what I had seen in the past a long time ago. And that one scene, I do recall very clearly that one scene with him going to the nudist school. I do remember them showing something to that degree. Maybe it was like just upper body stuff. And not
wow,
really
so they actually, I've never seen.
That. Yeah, I remember that clearly. So, when I saw this version, like a long time ago, I kind of confused them. But then I was like, oh, but he comes home in an overcoat, and I guess he is nude underneath as a 10-year-old kid because he had dragged him from the school to Mame's house.
So is the 70s version more racy?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, they could get away with more anyway.
I thought that was made in the 60s. So it was in the 70s that the musical was made? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was, I want to say 74 or 75.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could be wrong. It's interesting, too.
Lucille Ball was pretty old by that point.
Yeah, it's interesting bringing up Lucille Ball that in the 1958 version, Vivian Vance almost played Vera Charles, which is Auntie Mame's best friend, but she had to back out of it due to scheduling conflicts. So that was an interesting.
So Coral Brown plays her part, and she's an Australian actress, I believe. I think so. I think this is the only role I've seen her in, but yeah, she was really good.
I think she was on Broadway as well. And if I'm correct, was Gloria the villain for the Parent Trap movie?
Yes, Joanna Barnes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, because she has that that way that
it's
she talks.
Really, really exaggerated Mid-Atlantic accent, and she's always playing like really spoiled, privileged people.
like women, and she just really always has an annoying personality. I don't think she was like that in real life, but yeah, that's her character.
Yeah. Audi,
Well,
she plays the blonde in the original Parent Trap, the not very nice lady that the father Brian Keith's gonna marry.
Well, guys, since we're near the end of the first segment, did we want to segue before we get to the next film? Use these last few minutes of the first segment to talk about a short film that one of us starred in not too long ago.
We can.
All right, tell us. Well, now, how many short films have you been in now as an actor? 3? 4?
As a main actor,
Okay.
well, I've done 2 films as a main actor, and then I've done extra work and behind the scenes work as well.
Kat, did you see? Did you watch that thing yet?
Yes.
What's
Yeah,
the name of the-
he did a really good job. It was very unexpected.
This the where he plays the prison convict or whatever.
The serial killer, yes.
Serial killer. And what's the name of it?
The Messenger.
Okay.
And it's also interesting because you know, when I usually audition, I probably look like a great Jerry Lewis character. I have glasses, and so when I would audition, I would get the worst callbacks for parts. Like, we want you to play a professor and you get to have 5 words or whatever. And they were horrible parts. So I decided to take the glasses off when I would audition and grow a beard out, and people would start seeing me as villain characters. So I would get more heavier roles.
Yeah.
So I got asked to be an abusive husband for the previous film I had done, which was a total departure from what I'm used to.
You played that one so well because your character in the public is so gentlemanlike and demure, or at least whatever the male version of, but yet you were the husband of this totally introverted, abused slave wife, basically, and she ends up killing that character that you played. So, Kat, so I want to hear what Kat thought about her observations of the Messenger, what you did.
Well, your character is very intense, and it showed a creepy side to you.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, because you're trying to rid the world of all the bad people, basically.
Yeah.
Like it reminded me of Seven, the movie Seven.
Yes, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, so you're kind of like the Kevin Spacey character there, killing everybody.
It's kind of a movie. You know, accepting the film was very hard because I almost didn't accept that part. I was like, I don't think I can play this part. But I liked the sort of the struggle, because it's basically a conversation between the serial killer and the guard who is trying to figure out where his victims are buried, but they're having this whole discussion about, you know, who's right and who's wrong. So my part, I'm like, hey, I'm doing you all a favor by getting rid of all these people that you should be getting rid of. And he's like,
that is like Seven, because he was killing people who were breaking the 7 deadly sins in the Bible, right? Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of that concept. And but yeah, I read it, and I did a horrible job auditioning for it at first, and I was like, I just can't see myself in this part. But somehow I think the director, she probably saw something in me, so she kept asking me to do it different ways, different things, and then I got a call back for it, and I accepted it. And then I was like, what have I done? I don't know how to do this character. Had to shave my head, which was totally crazy.
Yeah. What did they say to you at your day job, man?
They were excited to see me in a role because, you know, I mean, I work with the elderly, so, you know, I'm very sweet and very nice, and so they were all like, oh, we're so excited to see your film. And I was like, I don't think you want to see this. All the residents wanted to see the film, and I was just like, I just don't know if you would look at me the same way. But they were excited. But yeah, playing that was a real departure. But, you know, working with the director was extremely, I mean, she reminded me probably a lot of Lewis, in that she planned out every shot. She had a book with sketches, and she had each shot planned. She would have the sketches of like a wide shot, a close up, and she had everything exactly, knew what angle she wanted to do.
So all directors don't do that?
I've worked with some that really don't have a plan. I've worked with some that kind of just wing it, which I feel doesn't. I think it hurts the production.
You're supposed to like, look at the script and then put a picture to it.
Yeah, I've worked with some that kind of that it feels like they kind of wing it, and they're kind of like, we'll fix it in post, which I feel is the worst thing you could say.
Your short film was very effective for 10 minutes, very strong acting.
When you look at yourself, do you like what you see based on what Kat said?
Yeah, I mean, as you're your own worst critic, so there is definitely pieces of the movie that I'm like, oh, I did really good, and then there's other pieces where I'm like, you want to do something better. I do remember that I would try to embellish a little bit. I would try to do different things here or there that, like, you want to do an interpretation of the character, and the director is like, okay, that was good, but could you? Then they have their own vision, so like, can you do it like this? And then some of that stuff doesn't make it into the film. So I would do like a sigh or a pause or something, which I felt was really good. And then she'd be like, okay, that's cool. Can you do it this way? And then I'm like, oh, that didn't get in there. But it's her, vision on what she sees. So, you have to respect that. But I think she edited it and cut it together very beautifully.
Well, Kat, what are your criticisms of Thad's performance?
I mean, the only thing I noticed was just maybe variations on tone of voice. That's the only thing.
Yes.
You mean the lack of?
Well, I think,
because remember that I said that to you before in your abusive husband role. Remember when you came down to see me, we watched it, and I said the only thing that I would change is maybe more variances in your tone. That's it. I never talked about this with Kat, and yet she just said that. So there you go.
And it's interesting is that I think you're right. Sometimes I feel like, because on that abusive husband role, there was a lot of scenes that were cut from the film, which I felt gave each of the characters more depth. So you would have a fluctuation of tone. And this one, if I remember correctly, I feel like I felt like I did different takes of things, but some of that stuff, didn't make it because I didn't know what the director's vision
Kat,
was.
I cut you off, but what else were you going to say? But as soon as you said that, I had to jump in because that's something that I've noticed about that too. But so of course, he's going to blame it on the editing. That's what they always do. Blame it on the editing.
Well, you never know at the time, because I mean, you'll do like 6 takes and you'll change the tone up. But if the director of the story calls for the same thing, it's hard because looking at that, I want to direct it a certain way, and I'm like, okay, I'll see it like this, but it's hard being an actor because you shoot, you do the takes, you shoot it, and then it's kind of, you don't see it ever again. So you don't get to see like, oh, I could do a better tone, or I could do, I could do that better, but then it's out of your hands basically. So that's the hardest thing for me, is because I look at it and I'm like, oh, I could have done this, but who knows if I actually, had done a take like that.
Yeah. And
oh, Japanese embassy. Nope, sorry. Do you get that reference? I was watching cable on MSNBC back in the 90s, and they did this compilation of all of Jerry Lewis's interviews and appearances on all these NBC-related shows, like the Today Show, his interview with Gene Shalit. And in 1984, Gene Shalit was interviewing Jerry, I think in his hotel room, and his phone kept ringing during the interview. So Jerry would pick it up and answer in a funny way every time. And one of them was, hello, Japanese embassy, So that's where I got that from. So now
that's the phone ringing, in case anybody was wondering.
It was your okay.
Yes. Okay. So I think it was just the tone for me. Like the rest of it, it was just strong. And I mean, it didn't bother me. Like it was just like, if I had to critique anything, it would just be that. But yeah, exactly what that said. Like you kind of have to be consistent if you're going to pick a certain tone for each phrase or something. Sometimes, I mean, you have to go through that in the script.
Yeah.
And just like see what your each reaction is going to be like. But I feel like you can't do that if you're going to be in the moment. Sometimes it's
especially like with a director who has everything storyboarded out and has like an ideal vision. I think there was times where I would do a line a certain way and she'd be like, that's good, could you, and then she would explain like why she wanted a different thing. But I mean, I still look at it and sometimes I'm like, oh, I could have done that particular line a little bit better. But you always do that. But I mean, it's one of the best productions I've worked on.
When a director intervenes in an actor's method, it can sometimes really piss off the actor. I remember seeing actor Rod Steiger on, I think it was later with Bob Costas, and he was talking about how he did another take for this role, and he felt like he was nailing it, and the director said cut during the middle of it, and he was like, why would you ruin this beautiful moment, this moment of art? Why are you doing that? So I think there's a key to being a little difficult.
Well, the interesting thing is I don't recall this director ever. I mean, she'd let you do your takes and then she'd be like, that was good. And I like that. She'd be like, that was good. Could you be a little more energetic? Could you be a little more subtle or whatever? And, so she was the most hands-on director I've worked with. I remember when I did my own production.
That's not good directing. That's giving you an adjective on how to play a role, but it's not really telling you why she wants you to play it that way.
Well, I'm leaving out some thought, but if she would discuss the character, in depth and do the background so that I had a clear picture, because that's very helpful when you're acting. You need a clear picture of who this character is, why they're doing this. So you need that as well.
Okay.
Especially on my own directing, I would let people have their takes, but then, you have a particular, I remember one time the actor wasn't getting the tone, like we just said, he wasn't getting the tone right. And I was like, you have to get this tone right. So I would ask for different takes. One of the actors, some of the actors just wanted to kill me because they were very theater.
Wanted to kill you when you had me do that voiceover playing God. He had me do it like 100 times saying, no, you did some more angry. What was the line again? Oh man, what was it?
I think it was like,
sure I nailed it. And
I was being a Cecil B. DeMille, where I was like, I need another few takes.
No, what I realized you needed was that I was trying to find a reverb effect. And I think I did the line with some reverb, and I think that's what it was. It wasn't me acting it. It needed a resonant.
Yes, that was it. Yeah, and I felt the scene didn't need that much of a reverb effect. I was looking for more.
It's the voice of God. It's coming from the air. So yes, it does make sense. Well, I see how directing a film with you is going to be. Okay.
About Shalom, Mama.
Who's the type that won't cop out when there's Gentiles all around? All right. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu.
Okay.
Well, we need to get to the Hebrew Hammer.
Yes, we do. That was a film that I recommended because I just felt like, it really ties into Jerry Lewis, because something Jerry Lewis said when people criticize him for always reminding people of that he was a proud Jew. He said, usually the person who is knocking me down for doing that, it's not Gentiles, it's another Jew because of their own whatever issues they're going through. So this film was written by and directed by Jonathan,
Kesselman.
Thank you, Jonathan Kesselman, who I think has the same attitude Jerry has. It's like, and I love the approach. The Hebrew Hammer is a spoof comedy that stars the very talented Adam Goldberg, who probably was the perfect person to play this role. It is a spoof of blaxploitation movies. You know, the early '70s black detective movies like Superfly and The Mac and Foxy Brown and all that.
And Shaft, especially because it has a like Shaft,
Definitely.
a
Yeah,
Shaft
and
theme song.
the theme song to the Hebrew Hammer is definitely a parody of Shaft. And the movie tackles every Jewish stereotype, but it owns it. And I think the director just wanted to make the official document of Jews parodying Jews. Better than Mel Brooks even. I mean, he went to places even Mel Brooks never went to. And so Adam Goldberg is basically this neighborhood super badass, and his mission is to save Hanukkah because the villain is played perfectly by Andy Dick, who probably is exactly in real life like the way he was. He was basically an evil Santa. He is the son of Santa Claus, and he kills his father, and he takes over as Santa Claus. And he is very belittling of Jewish culture. He calls Hanukkah, Hanukkah, and he just constantly is saying Hanukkah, and it's his mission to destroy Hanukkah. So there's basically like a United Nations type panel of all these Jews that basically they re-recruit Adam Goldberg's character to save Hanukkah. But there's a scene where Nora Dunn plays his mother. She was from Saturday Night Live in the 80s. She did the Pat Stevens show and the Sweeney Sisters. And she was the quintessential over-the-top, overbearing Jewish mother. So it touched on all that. It touched on, just every, all the Semitic colloquialisms and Yiddish are in the films, from shiksa to fakakta, just, you name it. And it's, you have to have a sense of humor to enjoy this film. And what I love about it the most is that he is assisted by Mario Van Peebles, who basically is the black, he represents the black urban culture. And so they, join forces to save Hanukkah. So it's really a coalition of blacks and Jews fighting this evil Santa. What did you got? There's some adult humor in it. So, and I can't wait to hear what you guys thought of it. But that's the premise.
When the part where like he's talking dirty to her, but it's not dirty talk.
Yes.
And it's just like every like stereotypical things that like Jewish people would want, like I'm gonna go to school, become a doctor or something. I don't know, something like outrageous thing like that. And she just
well, and I like how he starts though. You want us to talk dirty to you? You want us to talk dirty to you? Okay, well, we're going to get married and find a respectable neighborhood to live in. Oh, yes, maybe our kids, they'll go to Stanford, Yale even, so, yeah.
I also noticed how the director used a lot of classics in the movie. Like, I got like when the Hebrew Hammer throws the hat, I thought of the James Bond moment. And then also they had Sammy Davis Jr. in there.
Sammy Davis Jr.,
excuse me.
It was Sammy Davis Jr.
They also had a scene where it was completely shot in black and white, which made me think of like Humphrey Bogart, I think.
That was a setup for the joke when the woman comes in looking for Mike Hammer, who was the old private eye from the 40s. So that the whole purpose of that was to set up that one gag.
And then
like also noir stuff.
Yeah, and then also the gag where he's driving down the road and all the kids have been. It's like they've watched that movie and it's like kind of the drug, and then he opens up his trunk and has all the Jewish films in there. Quick, you gotta watch Fiddle on the Roof or Yentl. It's 65% pure, and I was.
Well, that's because dirty evil Santa was infiltrating the neighborhood with the drug of It's a Wonderful Life to turn Jewish kids off of Hanukkah, So instead of infesting neighborhoods with cocaine or heroin, it was It's a Wonderful Life to make all the Jewish kids resent Hanukkah,
Yeah, and the kid was like, every time a bell rings, the angel gets his wings. He's like keeps repeating it. He's like, no,
what?
Yentl, watch something else. Oh no, that wasn't Yentl. It was like, it's a Hanukkah
So
Well, Yentl was mentioned earlier. You went Yentl and Pillar of the Roof, you know. So, you know, you know, was there anything, what else impressed you guys about the film?
I did the first 10 minutes of the movie. I thought it was edited very smartly. I mean, the jokes and everything, the music, everything was edited very well in the first 7 or 10 minutes. It was a nice setup. And then, you know, periodically throughout the film, I would get that vibe as well. I was like, oh, that was very nicely, you know, put together.
Yeah, lighting, everything was very well done. It's, you know, I just caught that film on a whim on Comedy Central in 2004. You know, just had a day at the office, and I guess I'd had dinner. I don't know. I guess this is back when I still had cable television, and I put on Comedy Central, and they were showing it, and I believe unedited. And I was like, what? And of course, as you all know, I love Adam Goldberg anyway. So, but I was really extremely impressed with this film. And again, the film is unapologetically, you know, it tackles all the stereotypes and finds humor in them. There's the scene where he enters this Jewish council, but before he gets to meet with Peter Coyote, he has to go through all these identification levels to prove that he's Jewish. God, what was the the circumcision detector. He had to drop his pants so this machine could detect that his circumcision was authentic. That was one.
He had to do the whining machine where.
Well, that was that was the final test. They had to like keep him stuck so he would start whining, and then it was several levels that proved, okay, yeah, this guy's a Jew. You know.
Yeah. Also, I think I looked it up, and how was the movie received? Because I know some people, they were very critical of the film because of the jokes that was there was controversy from some, I believe it was Jewish panels, the real life Jewish panels. But how was it?
And see, and that goes back to what I was saying, what Jerry would say, you know, it's the self-hating Jew that's going to have a problem with it, not a proud Jew.
Mm-hmm. And how did it do? Very well.
I honestly don't know. In fact, I thought it was an original movie that Comedy Central made, because I don't know why. For years, I thought Comedy Central produced the film, but then I was watching the credits. Then it looks like it was a theatrical release, but I'm sure it was an independent film. So it probably ran the indie circuit, you know, in the small places that play independent films. But the fact that it was on Comedy Central less than a year after it came out, you know, it probably was not a major film. I would have to research that. I honestly don't know.
It only made, it says it only made like $83,000. So it was just it was at Sundance, and I think it's
wow. So it lost some, I'm sure. So I wonder how, and I remember reading an interview with Adam Goldberg. What is that phrase that in Yiddish culture that Jews say to each other as a greeting? Shalom, whatever it is, but
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Yeah.
Adam Goldberg said when he saw the script, he said, as soon as I saw Shabbat Shalom, motherfucker, I stopped reading it and I took the role. He said, I stopped reading it because he said this. So, do we know what the budget was for the film? Because, you know, Adam Goldberg
I believe it was 1.3 million.
Yeah.
So.
And I did hear that in 2017, the director wants to make plans for a sequel entitled The Hebrew Hammer versus Hitler. And they were trying to get it financed through crowdfunding, but I don't think there's been any news on that for about 4 years.
Oh, wow.
So it looks like that there was like 50,000 of donations from some organization, but I can't really find many information. They even did a promo video with Adam Goldberg and Greer Garson as kind of a married couple. I believe it's on YouTube. But other than that, I haven't. What?
You mean Judy Greer? You said
yes.
Greer
yes,
Garson.
Yes.
I was like, she came back alive.
Thank you. Yes. So they did a promo. Thank you for correcting me. They did a promo for that on YouTube, I think, where they're both married as kind of like a setup for the sequel. But I don't know if that it says it's been pre-production, but it's been.
You know, that's the thing about financing films. Somebody was telling me once that even if the director has all the money, him or herself, it's more credible to get investors and raise money to finance a film instead of you just finance it yourself. So it's like supposedly frowned upon to do that. So I'm a little surprised that the director has to resort to crowdfunding to fund a film. So, because I love this movie so much, and I was hoping that just with the course of television and cable that he made money, just from the residuals.
I also prior to this, I had only seen Judy Greer as like stuck up, nasty roles that probably from. There was 13 going on 30 that she was particularly just a nasty person in. But then this one, she's like she's pretty and like she's fighting crime and she's sort of his sidekick and she plays a great role in this.
And basically Adam Goldberg's mother, secretly, convinces her to, get her son. She wanted her son to marry her, and and I mean, I don't know that much about Jewish culture, but I assume that a Jewish mother, is going to say, hey, give my kid a blowjob and and he'll marry you or something. That was a little weird, but so I'm not qualified to make that call, but the implication I got was that this was a common thing, and that with the most overbearing of Jewish mothers, But I'd always heard that a lot of Jewish men marry outside the faith for that very reason.
Yeah.
Now, I don't piss off people watching this, because hey, I'm black. I've heard it all. So, I'll trade stereotypes with Jews any day of the freaking week. Okay. So get out my face with that criticism.
Because one of the things she was saying was like, you need to get a real job or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, I recognize that with my own mom because no matter what job I get, it's not a real job. And she's part Jewish. So
well, yeah.
Many of the things she was saying, she's definitely a Jewish mom.
Yeah, and how she would mention how so-and-so's son, brokered a merger with these two banks or whatever, So yeah, but but see, if it happens, great. But why not laugh at it? And that's what that film does. I really think it puts to rest all of that. And but again, I love how it brings blacks and Jews together. And it also is a bit of anger toward Christianity in it, because it does talk about what Jewish kids have to go through going to American public schools and being subjected to all this Christmas shit that they don't care about. But it also makes fun of the fact that Jews themselves don't even know what the purpose of Hanukkah is. Remember, they said, yes, we got to discover the true meaning of Hanukkah. And they're like, well, that's a good question. So it's fun at everything.
And even the mom was like, it's not one of the high holidays. If it would have been Purim or...
If you would have saved Passover or...
You would see, but it also talked about how... Because remember how Jerry Lewis, in his autobiography, said no matter what he did, his father was never impressed with his success? No matter what? So, anyway.
And the whole thing when he attacks Andy Dick's character with the Jewish guilt. That's the most important weapon in the Jewish arsenal.
But you don't have a little something here for me? I'm schwitzing here, just standing here. My feet are killing me. My God, you don't have any, you can offer me a little something here? So Adam Goldberg, I love Adam Goldberg, I truly do. And I guess to get a little naughty here, it subtly mentions another stereotype that supposedly Jewish men are all very well endowed. And there's a scene after he and the female lead are, they consummate their relationship, and he stands up in his bikini underwear, and there's this very obvious bulge there. So that was another subtle, reference to that, but geez, I could just go on and on about this film. I haven't seen it in a long time, and I'm glad you guys watched it. I was a little concerned for you with some of the jokes, because I know you don't really like raunchy stuff,
I did think some of the jokes were well written. The other one that was the Underground Railroad for Jews. And
Harriet Tubman.
they had Moses and who was some of the other ones, but they were all Jew characters, and they go underneath the city and get away from Santa. And I was just like, oh, and the person's name is Moses. It was a play on, I think, Harriet Tubman.
It seems like they covered every base. They really did.
The one part where Santa's like telling the kids like about like all these bad things about Jewish people. I was like, oh my God.
But see, but you notice in the very opening of the film, there's a saying, this film is dedicated to everyone who's tired of the Gentile or something like that. So probably not the most pro-Christian film I've ever seen, but so whatever.
I mean, it's all in fun. I mean, it's not hurtful. So
exactly. Wow, this was great. Well, I appreciate y'all watching that. Wow. So this has been what I think so far. This might be my favorite Total Film Critic podcast.
awesome.
I don't know.
Now, well, they say the third time's the charm, and this is our third episode.
It's our third. I thought it was our fourth. Okay. Wow. Oh, sorry. The Naked Prey, the Odd Couple one,
And we did Seconds and the King of Comedy.
Okay.
No, bloody mind-altering films.
Yeah, that's why I thought you would like Auntie Mame, because there's none of that, and it's very good comedy.
Very fun, and
they're both good comedies.
Yeah.
Well, I will catch up with it. As you all know, I'm in the process of moving. I just got myself an apartment. I'm going to be living by myself for the first time in probably 3 years. So I'm going to have a lot of time to, of course, work on my station, Modern Retro Radio, and also catch up with a lot more movies and stuff. And Kat, I meant to in the Jerry Lewis podcast, did I mention that how your New Year's Eve special was a total hit on Modern Retro Radio and all that? So I just wanted to document for everybody that Kat's one of the air talent from Modern Retro Radio, and she did New Year's Eve, and New Year's Eve is normally a death sentence for independent radio, and we had listeners, and it was a fun night. Played a lot of great music, old stuff, new stuff we don't normally play. It was so much fun. And she's handled a lot of the production, and she's our social media coordinator. And so while I'm getting settled in, I'm going to slow down on some of those tasks for a little bit, but just give me like a couple of weeks, and we're going to ramp up the production again and get everything going. But Kat, you're so valuable, and you do all the post-production work for these. You put in the JPEGs and all that stuff, so people know what we're talking about. So
we're doing Rockabye Baby and The Man with the Golden Arm next time.
Oh wow, 2 good ones.
Yeah.
I have not seen The Man with the Golden Arm in a long time, but I do remember it had a great impact on me when I saw it. Frank did such a.
So we're doing a Jerry podcast combo.
Yeah.
Jerry and Frank, yeah.
Okay. Well, this has been fun. I thank both of you guys guys and gals for doing this again. Check out Auntie Mame and check out The Hebrew Hammer, both great comedies. And this has been another edition of the Total Film Critic podcast.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Total Film Critic podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please check us out next time, where we'll be discussing Rockabye Baby from 1958, starring Jerry Lewis, and The Man with the Golden Arm from 1955, starring Frank Sinatra. Be sure to check us out on Facebook, The Total Film Critic, also Spotify and Pandora.